Hello, everyone. This is Al Fadi, and I want to welcome you to a brand new series with our friend, the apostate prophet. This time, we are going to take a different angle and a different approach in terms of another problem found in Islamic traditions. And we're going to call this series the Kaaba problem. Again, it's the Kaaba problem. Of course, when we're talking about the Kaaba, we're talking about the shrine found in Mecca at the Holy Mosque of Islam that Muslims face daily. Muslims face daily in prayers. Let me just make a side note about that, even though we're not going to talk about it from that angle. It's a building made out of rocks, and people bow to it daily. It has another rock on one of its sides called the Black Stone that people rush to touch or even kiss. And I was there many times, and I even fought with people to touch it or to kiss it. It's just a rock. Just a side note. I just wanted to make this point clear that people bow to a rock, touch a rock, and kiss a rock. And yet, Islam allegedly came to fight idolatry. You can make up your own conclusions about what I just said. However, we are going to interview here our friend AP, the apostate prophet, who's going to be joining us virtually into the studio to discuss what we call the Kaaba problem. And with that in mind, I want to turn my attention to our guest. AP, thank you so much for agreeing to be with us here to talk about such an important, really, element of Islamic faith. And in this case, it's the Kaaba that represents at least two different pillars of Islam. One is the prayer, people pray there, and also the pilgrimage when people go there and circumvent, the Kaaba. So tell us about this problem and what is it that you are going to enlighten our viewers about?
Definitely. Thank you so much, first off, again, for having me. I'm very pleased to go into this. So we call this the Kaaba problem because it is a big problem that lies directly at the core of Islam. This is at the heart of Islam. I think this is a major problem. As you have pointed out, the Kaaba is essential, fundamental, foundational to Islam. It is directly at the core of it. Many of Islam's fundamental practices are built on the Kaaba. The entire Islamic narrative is supported by the Kaaba. And Islam makes big claims about the history of the Kaaba, but we find, if we look further into the history, into anthropology, and also into Abrahamic religion, that the Islamic narrative on the Kaaba doesn't seem to add up. And it looks like that the Kaaba was merely a pre-Islamic Arab pagan tradition, which Islam adopted and revised, changed, and made it look like an Abrahamic practice, an Abrahamic monotheistic practice, which doesn't seem to make sense. And we can analyze this from several different perspectives, which we want to do with this series, hopefully.
Wonderful. So what is the first perspective that we'd like to address in this particular part?
Well, at first I want to go into the Islamic narrative on the Kaaba. What does Islam say about the Kaaba? What is the significance of the Kaaba according to Islam? In order to understand this, I think we should analyze Islam's stance on the Kaaba to a great extent. So at first I want to look at what the Kaaba means according to Islam. So if you are a Muslim, you grow up with a picture of the Kaaba everywhere the entire time. When you think about the Islamic religion, when you think about your religion, you think about the Kaaba. People around the world think about the Kaaba when they think about Islam. It is one of the most recognizable objects when you think about Islam as a religion, which is not without reason. When you look at the Quran says that that the Kaaba was the first house built by Abraham for humans in order to worship Allah, the first house on earth. That's how the Quran describes it. And the Quran says that Allah showed the location of the Kaaba, of the ancient house, to Abraham. And Abraham then, by the instructions of Allah, built this Kaaba. And he also had the mission to invite mankind to worship and to come to pilgrimage to the Kaaba. So this was Abraham's mission according to the Quranic narrative. And the Quran also calls Mecca, where the Kaaba is located, the mother of cities. So this city is of great importance, is the heart of Allah's religion on earth. And according to the Islamic narrative, Abraham built this. Since the time of Abraham, according to the Quran, people have been coming to the Kaaba from all around the world, from distant lands and passes, and they have been engaging in practices of sacrifice, of pilgrimage, and of worship. For this reason, Muhammad also adopted during his lifetime the practice, according to the Islamic narrative, of praying toward the Kaaba and going to pilgrimage to the Kaaba annually. When you look at the history of the direction toward which the Muslims would pray, if you look at the Islamic tradition solely, you see that Muslims would initially pray toward Jerusalem, because the Jews would pray toward Jerusalem, apparently, and that's what Muslims wanted to do as well, because they share the same religion, according to Muhammad back then. But after a certain time, after the Muslims settle in Medina and establish their own state, they have a dispute with the Jews. And even according to the Islamic narrative, even according to the Quran, the Jews make fun of Muhammad by saying, you are just praying to wherever we are praying. And Muhammad gets upset by this. And Allah then, according to the Quran, Allah then reveals the true direction of the Qibla, the prayer of the direction of prayer, and says, now turn towards the Kaaba, toward Mecca. And that is where Muhammad prays to. And this is, as you said, it concerns two foundational pillars of Islam, which is the prayer and the pilgrimage, and even more, the whole sacrifice. And many of those things are done around the Kaaba. The Kaaba is obviously a hugely significant place. So some traditions even say that initially Adam built the foundations of the Kaaba, that initially he built the Kaaba, or that he initially, that he established the location of the Kaaba, and that Abraham's role was merely that Allah showed him the position where the Kaaba was, or where it is supposed to be, and Abraham then built this cube shape with different rocks, and attached a rock that came from heaven, that fell from heaven to the side of it. So this is the significance of it according to the Islamic narrative.
Absolutely. And, I don't want to rush you, of course, but maybe in the next 2 to 3 minutes to wrap up this part at least, what else you would like to address for this particular section before we jump into the next one? And what is the next one also going to be about, if you want to give an idea?
In the next one, I want to talk a little bit about the historicity of the Kaaba and what we know from history and even from early Islamic history about the Kaaba. And to wrap up this section, I just want to add, so the significance of the Kaaba is so big according to Islam, and if the Kaaba is indeed what Islam tells us the Kaaba is, then we are, of course, expected to find some history to that, right? Because as Muslims, we learn, as a Muslim, I learned that Mecca was extremely important, a big trade center, a center of religious worship. So we would expect that Mecca and the Kaaba appear in history and also within Abrahamic religion. And we want to address this in the next episodes.
Wonderful. Thank you, AP, as always. Very meticulous, very well researched, and we appreciate the insights that you bring into to the table in discussing things that are very essential in this case to our Muslim friends to understand that we're not dealing with a joke here, with something that is light. No, it's serious. I mean, again, we said the Kaaba has to do with at least two important pillars, and that's the second pillar, which is prayer, daily facing this shrine, and also the last pillar, the fifth pillar, which is the pilgrimage, which Muslims are at least required to come once in their lifetime, not to mention the minor pilgrimage, which I've been to Mecca hundreds of times, and I've been around that place, and I saw the shrine. It's built out of bricks, by the way. It's rocks, that's all. It's built out of rocks. Yes, it has a fancy cover. I'm sure it's expensive. Some will say it's even more than $1 million. I get it. It has verses written in gold threads. I get it. It has a golden door. I get it. But it's still a rock that has a rock in it called the black stone. People bow down to a rock. Notice, you bow down to a rock. You touch a rock. You kiss a rock. So if it looks like a rock, it touches like a rock, it feels like a rock, it is a rock. That's what it is. And that's idolatry. That's what I wanted to highlight. And again, we are going to explore more debacles and more problems related to the Kaaba. Again, AP, thank you so much for your time. And until next time, everyone, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, Sira International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.